Good evening, everyone. It's been a tumultuous year so far, hasn't it, with COVID and Black Lives Matter. And of course, this month it's Black History Month. So I thought I'd share with you what I've been doing with my English GCSE resets. These are the 6 texts that AQA have provided for our students over the last 3 years of November and June exams. As you can see, they're fairly innocuous. I would say middle England, middle class, middle brow. And all I've done with my students is swap them over. Obviously, they're not doing the exam at the moment, but we're looking at these texts and looking at them in the same way we would look at the exam texts. Okay. Each text is a kind of pair. So Sam Selvin, Lonely Londoners and the Emigrants by George Lamming go together, both written at the same period, the Windrush period in the 1950s. Andrea Levy, Monica Ali, more contemporary British writers of the late 90s, early 2000s, and the 2 African-American writers, one contemporary and one from the 1970s, Angie Thomas, James Baldwin. Each can be compared and contrasted as a way of developing our students' learning. But of course, we can't teach these in isolation, or at least I don't think so. So I've taught them in context, or teaching them in context, of the Empire Windrush and the post-war modern immigration period. We've looked at the very famous Pathé News, with some of the passengers being interviewed and Lord Kitchener doing his Calypso song. And afterwards, I just get my students to use their phones to look up the Windrush generation and just write a very brief summary. And then I go back to Lord Kitchener, and it just so happened, just by pure fluke, I suddenly realised, actually, this is such a good song to teach irony. And let me show you why. So if you look at the second verse, it says, to live in London, you are really comfortable because the English people are very much sociable. They take you here and they take you there and they make you feel like a millionaire. And I've discussed this with my students, and I've asked them, do you think that was the case? And we've already discussed, and I've already sort of given them some context as to how black people were treated in London in the 1950s, and it generally wasn't great. I'm not saying it was universally bad, but it was fairly bad. And then we look at the last verse, and there's the damning evidence. He says, yes, I cannot complain of the time I have spent. I mean, my life in London is really magnificent. I have every comfort and every sport, and my residence is Hampton Court. That puts everything else in perspective. That makes everything he said before probably ironic, because we know obviously he didn't live in Hampton Court. And so that one little sentence turns everything on its head. And I use the example of films that have a twist ending. Well, this is a song in a way that has a twist ending. So that's irony. So that's just a very brief overview. Obviously, it's not the whole lesson, but it just gives you an idea of where I've been taking my students. And I have to say, it's been so promising. I can sense students realizing where I'm going with this. And let's not beat about the bush. Many students can go through our whole education system without ever having read a black British author, which I think is shameful. And so far, my students seem to be agreeing with me. So thank you.